Welcome once again, everybody, to Azra Mahal. You are in store for a real treat tonight. A truly spectacular evening. We are gathered here to listen to Ruchira Gupta, a fantastically accomplished journalist, a leader, the founder of Apne Aap, an organization to stop sex trafficking, especially affecting young girls, not just in India, but all around the world. An author and one of my closest friends who just released her wonderful book for young adults, I Kick and I Fly. Congratulations, Ruchi. We will hear from you momentarily, but first let me acknowledge the presence of all the incredible women, men, and young adults and children in this room tonight who have gathered here to celebrate you and along with you to celebrate and help promote the cause of individual empowerment, especially for girls, and the many paths that you have championed for all of your professional adult life. Ruchi, I am proud to be called your friend. When our daughter Scheherazade was 5 years old, my husband Harvey, who was from Brooklyn, asked her one day what she wanted to be when she grows up. Without missing a beat, she responded, "Well, I don't want to be like you, Dad. You're too serious and you're always working. I want to be like my mom, a little dumb." When she was a bit older, I asked her why she said this. Her immediate and spontaneous response was, "Hey, don't blame me. Blame the cultural stereotypes that I was subjected to." I recount this episode because it explains graphically what the real co-host of this evening, Ms. Gloria Steinem, has been telling us for half a century. And I quote Gloria, "The first problem for all of us, men and women, is not to learn, but to unlearn." Well, I am happy to report to you, Gloria, that we started little Scheherazade on the process of unlearning at a very young age. And you were always a larger than life presence in this process. So let me start by formally thanking Ms. Steinem on behalf of every individual in this room and thousands of men and women outside who have been the beneficiaries of your largesse. We understand that the evening belongs to Ruchi, and of course we'll hear from her to our heart's content. But in a way, your presence in this room tonight, hosting this book launch, is the highest compliment for Ruchi. And so in this spirit, I hope it does not make Ruchi or you uncomfortable if I say a few words or a few paragraphs about you first. Friends, Ms. Gloria Steinem, who has been fighting for women's equality for more than half a century, was born in Toledo, Ohio. At 22, after graduating from Smith College, she broke off a marriage engagement and traveled to India. In India, she learnt about organized resistance techniques developed decades earlier by Mahatma Gandhi. When she was 29, working as a journalist in New York, she went undercover as a Playboy bunny and wrote a notorious expose for Show magazine about the sexual harassment women faced at the job. On the one hand, it was a fine piece of investigative journalism, but on the other, Gloria then spent years being identified as an ex-bunny. She soon became frustrated by lack of opportunity to write meaningfully about women's liberation and especially about reproductive rights. For years, she was the girl writer. When she was 37, Gloria and fellow feminist Dorothy Pitman Hughes co-founded Ms. Magazine, the first periodical created, owned, and operated entirely by women. And in the very first issue, it featured a letter by Gloria and 52 other prominent women writers, athletes, artists, declaring that they had had abortions. This was a full year before Roe versus Wade. This was a full year before the Supreme Court established abortion rights. The issue of the magazine sold over 300,000 copies in the first week. Following the success of Ms. Magazine, Gloria traveled almost constantly for the next 2 decades as a public speaker and as an organizer. During this journey, I met you for the very first time when you came to Cincinnati back in 1989. And I took my whole lab, men and women, postdocs and MDs, some 14 of them, to hear you in person. And one of the first lessons I learned from you is that communicating through the written word is just not enough. You need all 5 senses to be present in order to actually feel empathy through the release of oxytocin. And following your lead, I too began to travel around the country. So much so that my brother, Steinem, used to say that I only go home to pick up a change of clothing. I was carrying my message of early cancer detection and cure of cancer through prevention. Instead of trying to chase down the last cancer cell, my quest has been to find the first cancer cell and prevent this cell from becoming the end stage monstrosity that we find so hard to control. As you can see, I have not exactly succeeded like you, but every single day I start fresh on the quest of finding an answer for cancer by keeping your lessons in mind that empower me. I share patient journeys with doctors, their families. Other patients speak up and exchange personal stories, and there is no substitute to this uniquely human experience. So, this time around, I want to thank you personally for being such a phenomenal guide for me. Thank you. By the way, I was also a groupie of James Baldwin. He thought I was stalking him because I would appear everywhere in Western New York, wherever he was giving a talk. I would appear and sit in the front row giving him cheesy grins. Gloria was an early advocate for the Equal Rights Amendment, for adding gender equality to the US Constitution, testifying before the Senate and marching in Washington, D.C. to demand its passage in 1978. In 1972, she campaigned for Shirley Chisholm, the first black woman to run for president. She continued to champion the intersection of feminism with black rights, feminism with indigenous and Latino rights, feminism with LGBTQ plus rights, going forward on all levels at once, building an important bridge between white women and black women, navigating a great way into the silent majority, leading a coalition of the powerless. In 2005, she and Jane Fonda established the Women's Media Center to promote women of power in the industry. At 79, she received the Presidential Medal for Freedom. President Obama said, There was a young girl named Gloria Steinem who arrived in New York to make her remarks as a journalist. And magazines across America only wanted her to write articles like how to cook without really cooking for men. Because of Gloria's work around the world, more women are granted the respect and opportunities that they deserve. End of quotation. She endorsed Hillary Clinton in 2016 and spoke at the Women's March on Washington the day after Donald Trump's inauguration. Many of us in this room, including me, my friend Manu Passague, who couldn't come tonight, attended this in person and heard you say, sometimes we have to put our bodies where our beliefs are. Sometimes pressing send is not enough. Just this march in Washington, you said, required 1,000 more buses than the entire inauguration. 1,000 more buses.
And the inauguration of Trump.
Yes. Today, Gloria continues to tirelessly advocate for marriage equality, for the #MeToo movement, for the protection of abortion rights. It is thanks to Gloria that anti-abortion bills failed in GOP-controlled Nebraska last week. And in South Carolina, the Republican state senator, Katrina Shealy, who voted against the bill, said on Wednesday on the Senate floor that once a woman became pregnant for any reason, she would now become property of the state of South Carolina if the Human Life Protection Act were to come into law. She could no longer make decisions on her own or at the advice of her well-trained doctor. Every female, regardless of her age, would suddenly become subject to the power of a code book regarding her health. End of quotation. These rejections come directly because of the inspiration derived from your words, your actions, your leadership, your teachings. We thank you for showing us the way, seeding activism, especially giving encouragement to young women, including those in my family, Scheherazade, Aliyah, Akbi, Anjuli, Melissa, Sarah. Thank you so much, Gloria. Let me end by reminding everyone of a few iconic quotations from Gloria. For example, women are all becoming men we wanted to marry. And here she was speaking about, a universal loss of memory that most of us who reach a certain age begin to experience, and if not loss of memory, at least a delay in recall of something. About this, Gloria said, I am at an age where remembering something right away is as good as having an orgasm. Once when you were asked why you're not married, your response was, I can't mate in captivity. But then you said it's unfair to married couple. I love this one, which I believe an Irish taxi driver woman said to you. You were having a heated conversation with someone in a cab, and then the taxi driver, who's this Irish female, turned back and said, if men got pregnant, abortion would be a sacrament. Somebody asked Gloria, do you believe in God? And she said, no, I believe in humans. There is a godliness in each person, the incredible miracle of possibilities, the mystery, the excitement, the potential. Oh, you like this even better. In fact, Gloria said, the biggest con job of religion is to make people believe that life after death is better than life now. And this is my favorite line, how Gloria ended it, is even corporations with all their reward systems don't try to make the rewards posthumous. We have begun to raise daughters more like sons, but few have the courage to raise our sons more like our daughters. This one is so beautiful. This is the last one. The only alternative to being a feminist, the only alternative to being a feminist is being a masochist. So profound. So let me come back a full circle to where we started. When Scheherazade was 8, we had now given her 3 full years of the unlearning experience. She asked Harvey one day, what macho is? He replied, well, it's a person who's in charge, makes decisions, gives orders, and everyone around obeys those orders. Scheherazade was thrilled to hear this and said, wow, when I grow up, I want to be a macho. Just like my mom. Thank you. Many people in this room know that I can't end anything without quoting poetry, right? So I'm going to slightly alter a couple of lines from Emily Dickinson. I claim to know hundreds of her verses in memory because I adore her as a poet. But I think this really suits Gloria so beautifully because I've never met anyone with this level of combination of these two beautiful things. Her brain is wider than the sky, for put them side to side. Her brain is wider than the sky, for put them side to side. The one, the other, will contain with ease and you besides. Her brain is deeper than the sea, for hold them blue to blue. The one, the other will absorb as sponges, buckets do. You know, a little sponge can absorb a whole bucket of water. So her brain is wider than the sky, her brain is deeper than the sea, for hold them blue to blue. The one, the other will absorb as sponges, buckets do. Her brain is just the weight of her heart. Her brain is just the weight of her heart, for heft them pound for pound, and they will differ if they do, as syllable from sound. Congratulations. Such an honor to have you here, such an honor. I'm going to sit here. No.
I fear that there is no way I can follow myself.
Brilliant.
Except I should perhaps add one thing, which is that what turned a young woman from the Midwest who had just finished college and hadn't a clue what she wanted to do in life into someone who had some idea of what I wanted to do in life was living 2 years in India. Mm-hmm. It just happened that I was engaged to be married, and in order not to get married, I had to go very far away. And all the women in my family had been theosophists. Is that a word that still has meaning? You haven't heard a word up to now? No. Okay. So I, as a child, had been sitting in the back of many rooms while my mother and both my grandmothers went to theosophical meetings with a coloring book called Lotus Leaves for the Young. And because of that, when I graduated and was, as I was saying, trying to not get married as everyone else in the 50s was doing, and I was engaged, I went to India. And I owe so much endlessly to India. I, of course, was enamored of Gandhi and trying to write about Gandhi. And then finally I went to talk to Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay. Do you remember this wonderful woman? Who had had a great deal to do with India. And she sat on her veranda rocking and drinking tea, and finally she said, "Well, my dear, we taught him everything he knew." And she explained to me that the women's movement and the Salt March to the Sea and all of these, events was the movement that Gandhi became part of and recognized for and served, but that the women's leadership of that movement was not necessarily so well remembered. So whatever I am today, it's India's fault. But the important thing we are here for is the birth of a book. I know that birthing children is quite an accomplishment too, but I really do think that birthing a book is right up there as somebody who has not managed to do it again for many years, and I'm hoping to get a kind of contact high. But this story, I don't know how many of you have already had the chance to read this, but this story about a 14-year-old girl from a nomadic tribe who escapes the sex trade and discovers the strength of women and collective action is truly a book that can transform the reader and readers and more readers and ultimately change the world. So I want you to meet its author, my friend, my model in writing, my hope that I will eventually write as much as she has, right? As a journalist, as a novelist, everything that she has done. And so I really want you to hear from Ruchira Gupta.
Thank you, Gloria, and thank you, Azra, for such a beautiful introduction to Gloria, capturing her life, introducing her quotes, her wit, her way with words. So when Gloria says that I write more than her, it's impossible. But the one thing that Gloria did for me to get me to write this book was she believed that I could write. And I remember I had come to New York with breast cancer, and I phoned Gloria from Iran. I was working for UNICEF in Iran at that time. And I said, Gloria, I think I've got diagnosed with cancer. Can you set up a meeting? And she set it up with Larry Norton at Sloan Kettering, and there was a concierge waiting on the sidewalk when I came down from the airport. I gave him the records, and Gloria was at home, her home. She opened the door and said, welcome home. And when I walked in, she said, while you're getting treated, we could write a book together. And I said, Gloria, I'm not that kind of a writer. And she said, of course you can. And, I would keep notes, and that sort of inspired me. And my brain was not functioning properly in the middle of the chemo and all of that. So I would write something, and I think Gloria edited it. And it was just such a process, but it just built my confidence to begin writing again after so many years. I never thought I would turn to fiction at all. But I began writing this book, I Kick and I Fly, as a novel when it was born out of my activism against sex trafficking, running the NGO that I started called Apne Aap, when a girl in my NGO won a gold medal in karate. And my heart was kind of full when she was talking about the gold medal and the community was celebrating, and I could see that this was about to trigger change. And I thought, I've got to write about it. So I was on a flight, I began to write the story there. And when the flight landed, I didn't complete the story, I stopped and I began to do the work. And then when I came back to it was during the COVID lockdown. I was in India painting and thinking about the world and what was going to happen. I also saw that there was hope in the human spirit. People were bonding with each other in different ways. There was the monsoon in India and the trees were blossoming again. And my family was recovering from COVID. Gloria was far away in California, and I would send her photographs of my painting, and she would send me some beautiful emails back. And you know, this bond between human beings, which I found, like COVID, of course, respected no country, but nor did the bonds of humanity. And I wanted to share that there is hope in this humanity. And if you do something, then it does make a difference. And so therefore I decided that as a tribute to someone I love and I adore, and you know, she's probably heard this many times, take what she says very seriously, I thought my biggest tribute to Gloria is to share this story with the world. Because Gloria always says change begins at the bottom and transforms the top. It's like a tree. And many people think it's banal. Even when she told me the first time when I met her 20 years ago, I thought it was banal. And then doing the work, I found no. The other thing Gloria would say when I was doing the work was, you know, I would say, I'm not sure this is working or that is working, and you know, all these strategic business plans and Excel spreadsheets and all, I'm getting lost in them. I don't know how to count the data, I don't know how to do all this. I just understand when I'm sitting in a circle with the women what they are saying, and I can respond to that. So she would say, that's what you should do then, and listen, and do whatever you do, do it as if it matters. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's big or small, that only time will show, but you have to do it as if it matters. And again, that, you know, the fact that this girl had won a gold medal, the fact that this girl was from a nomadic tribe, the fact that she was in college during COVID, and she was, you know, when COVID was over, she was going to graduate and get a job, proved that it was true, that, you know, you just have to keep organizing in small circles. And I would sit with the women on straw mats in the red light area of Orbisganj, Bihar, and the traffickers would be trying to jump over the walls to get to us. I would not think that I would actually succeed, but I thought I'm going to try anyway because that's what I do, that's my nature. And it did bear fruit, and Gloria came and visited with us at least I think 4 or 5 times, and one time she even missed Jane Fonda's birthday to come and sit in that small circle on the straw mat, bitten by mosquitoes, talking to the women and girls. And I remember one very important conversation with Gloria that time, that one of the girls had. You know, she went to Gloria and she was about 12, and her father was preparing to sell her into the cattle fair, and it was just coming in January, and we were just there a few days before that. And this girl asked Gloria that, you know, my family is starving, and if I don't allow my father to sell me, then my younger brother won't get food, my mother will be beaten up, what should I do? And do you want to say what you told the girl?
Well, I mean, the gist of it was, no one owns you, no one can sell you, not your father, not anyone.
And that girl believed Gloria because Gloria was talking to her in her place, in the place where she was safe and comfortable and at her level. Simple, easy words. The girl held on to it, said no to her father, and just like the character in my novel, Hira, who said no to her father, resisted the fact that she would be sold into prostitution when the cattle fair came to town. She somehow found allies, the women's rights movement sort of got into her life in some fashion, and she won a gold medal, fought her way back to school. And that girl today also is now a college graduate, and she has a job in a call center in Delhi. And you know, there are others like her who, through this NGO that I've been running, Apnia, who have become doctors, lawyers, teachers, chefs, and I didn't even know it would happen because you lose as many back to the traffickers as you win, and you forget because you're so busy doing the fight with the traffickers that you forget what you've done. So this is why this book is important. I wrote this book because it's based on hope, but not only is it based on hope, it's based on truth. It's based on really succeeding, and really a girl from a dirt poor nomadic tribe in a red light district in the poorest part of India, winning not just a gold medal but finishing school and college, and a red light area itself. And there's Jessica in the room and some others who've been to that red light area. That red light area itself, which had 72 brothels when we began work, turning into a non-red light area. Now there are only 2 brothels, and those brothels don't have back rooms of trafficked girls which are being sold to men, but they have back rooms which are empty, and the 2 older women who are aging out are living there and not trafficking anyone or bringing them in. So how did that happen? The women organizing, the girls going to school, the traffickers being put in jail. And that whole story about how it happened is told in I Kick and I Fly. And I literally try to put myself in the shoes of the girl, of the brother, of the father, the mother, the teachers, because even the teachers were heckled and abused by the traffickers. The mother who would break stone on the highway, try to get a loan to stop the roof from leaking, get food for the kids. And how did it all happen? It doesn't ever get captured in an Excel spreadsheet. This is a story, it's full of human experiences, and I wanted to share that because I think there's a new generation of activists emerging in the world, and all of them are between 12 and 14. When I look at YouTube, I see, kids standing up to gun violence, and they're just 12, and they go speak to state legislators about it. I see kids who talk about racism and say this is wrong, we don't want it in our backyard. I see kids talk about their bodies and control of their bodies. So many kids joined Black Lives Matter and ran campaigns for them about saving the world through from climate change, talking about environmental justice. And so, everyone used to say students are very narcissistic, and I thought not actually. And what they need to hear as the activists is that yes, what you're doing will bear fruit, it will have an impact. And so my book really is like a message in a bottle. It's my way of sharing hope with the next generation of activists, which is why I chose Scholastic as my publisher, because they understand young people and they get to every young people where they are, in schools, in libraries. And I want, my hope for the book is that kids read it and find some inspiration, also some clues, because these things happen to young people but nobody wants to talk to them about it. So it's also a way to break the silence. In the big culture war in America, we never talk about things which matter to young people with young people. So this is a way of breaking the silence. It's a story based on truth and hope. And I want parents and teachers to read it also, because I think they don't know how to talk to young people about these issues: body shaming, bullying, food insecurity, homelessness, human trafficking, sexual abuse, because these things exist. And if we don't talk to kids about it, how are they going to spot the signs or fight it? How can they equip themselves? So my hope is really to reach the next generation of activists with ideas, clues. And Gloria blurbed the book, and she said something very appropriate, and I thought, great, this is fantastic. And now I really believe, again, when I look at the rearview mirror for the blurb, she said this book could save lives. I think it could save lives. And every time I meet somebody, I meet a mother and a daughter, I meet a mother and a son, and they tell me that, one mother here right now in the audience told me that her son read the book in 2 days. And he's 14. And he found it interesting. So not only did I try to tell the story as a fast-paced social justice adventure, but I tried to put something which would be interesting and new for young people. And Scholastic has created like a reader's guide along with it, so that young people can find ways to discuss it. But the reader's guide is actually for adults, because kids know what to say. It's the adults who don't know what to say. And the mother is here right now in the room, and I want to invite her to read from the book. Her name is Nandita Das. Nandita is one of India's most famous actors, and as an actor you must have seen her in the movie Earth, which was one of the first movies in which there was a lesbian couple division, a partition on the partition of India. A fire was on that, and Nandita has made a wonderful Netflix series which any of you can watch on Manto, the writer who wrote about the partition of India and the trauma and the pain that it caused. And she just also, when the Gujarat massacre happened in India, Nandita is a very bold director. She made a film called Firak about a family which experienced fear and while the massacre was happening outside. And right now she's touring America because she's made a movie called Zwigato about people who deliver things to us, these delivery people. And she's always tried to portray not just the underdog, but the inside world of people who have to take on massive systems. And she's done that very, very beautifully. She has an integrity which I love. Her mother is a staunch Gandhian who I've known for years, Varsha Das, and she was on many trusts for holding on to Gandhi's legacy and passing it on. And she refuses to leave Bombay, but continues to work right there in the middle of everything which is going on in Bollywood right now. A bold, courageous and creative person with a heart and a mind. Nandita. Would you like to sit and read or stand and read?
I can stand and read.
Nandita, we've met many years ago. Lovely meeting you.
You can sit. I can sit here.
No, Nandita.
It's street play days. I can read
Nandita,
aloud.
Nandita, यहाँ पे.
I will. Well, I just want everyone to please notice my shawl. This is Mantu. It says Mantu, and on the other side is the writing of Mantu, and I'm wearing it in honor of my beloved. I'm really the lucky one, just so you know. One, I'm living in Azra Mahal. This is my New York home, so I'm always very fortunate to not only get the affection, warmth, wit of Azra Appa, but also meet incredible people. And you're definitely one of my heroes. No, it's true. I mean, I know many things have been said, and I just want to say ditto, 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 just to save time. But you've opened doors for so many of us, so that we can do what we are doing. No, really, means a lot. I haven't read the book, but my son has, and he's only 12. He's 12, yeah, it's literally 12 plus, so he's 12 plus. And he's read it, and he pretty much read it at one go. And yeah, in less than 2 days, like few hours between yesterday and today. And he chose some passages, and Azra Appa chose some, so I'm going to read. Please don't judge me by my reading, because as most mothers do, they juggle between many things. When they work and they spend time with their children, and they're so in love with their friends when they're staying, so the time is... Blame it on me.
Totally blaming it on you. Yes. So I'm going to read 2 small passages. And my son suggested that I should read from the beginning portion so that it's not a spoiler. And I think that was a good idea, so I've kind of stuck to the early chapters. I take my mat and spread it on the floor of the mess hall. As I cross my legs to sit, I sneak a look at my toes peeping out of the torn shoes. Mine are too. Are my feet really dirty? I look more closely. They are cracked and coated with filth. I thought my brown skin hid the dirt, but it doesn't really work that way, I suppose. I curl my toes into my shoes and tuck my feet under me. And then the food arrives. Whole spices, cauliflower and chunks of potatoes almost melt into the roasted moong dal that has been boiled with rice and arhar dal. These are different names of dals, lentils. The khichdi is a mix of rice and dal. It's a staple diet for many. The khichdi glistens with a spoonful of ghee topping it. Clarified butter, ghee topping it. I can think of nothing else as I swallow great, big, hungry mouthfuls. We're almost done eating by the time they bring around the boiled eggs. One perfect, gleaming oval hits my steel plate and rolls around. Eggs are only served twice a week, and they have always been my favorite food. I can practically taste the egg's rich, heavy, buttery flavor. I keep my eye on it as I finish the rest of my food. I know it won't disappear, but I don't dare to look away. The kids around me don't seem to notice when I slip the egg into my bag. What if I were to leave now and bring Mai the egg for lunch? My full stomach is a heavy burden to bear. But as I quietly file out, Manish suddenly appears at my elbow with two other boys who I don't know as well. "Oh, hello, Hira," Manish says with a smirk. "What's in the bag?" I hold on my big bag tightly. "What do you do when you aren't at school?" asks one of the boys with him before I can respond. "I bet I know what she does when she isn't here," says another boy. He walks forward and stands beside Manish. They don't live far from our land, lined with small brothel rooms behind the huts. They know. "Why does she come to school anyway? We know what she'll end up doing. You don't need to read and write to do that," the first boy says, as if I'm not even there. "Hey, like that cousin of hers, Meera. But she spent all day reading," taunts the other boy. Their laughter echoes through my brain. My cheeks are on fire and my heart begins to race. Shame creeps onto my skin, heating my face from the inside. And then Manish grabs my bag, and I know immediately what he's going to do. I try to snatch it back, but he's already reached inside. His smile is an awful thing across his face. "Hira laid an egg, Hira laid an egg," he sings as he pulls out the egg and holds it above his head. I run after him as he strides down the corridor. It's as though I'm back in front of my family's tiny hut just a few days ago, chasing down the pig that stole my little sister Chotu's only good shirt. That didn't end well, and neither will this. I don't even know my next move. I act on impulse and kick Manish hard in his butt. And as he tumbles to the floor, I reach out and yank the egg out of his hand. Miraculously, it is intact. I put it into my pocket, and before he can get up, I let my fist fly, hitting him straight in the face. I watch, as though in slow motion. Blood flies out of his mouth. I lean down and pick up a tooth off the ground, and he looks at me with horror as he reaches up to his face. The shouts around me grow louder, crying for punishment. The crowd wants retribution for Manish and his broken tooth. I return the tooth, but keep the egg. That's for you, Ruchira, for writing that. Meera Di comes and hugs me. It's from the middle, so you'll get a sense. I just hope we can tickle enough so that you can all read it. Meera Di comes and hugs me. She strokes my head. "I know you feel frustrated, but you have a choice. What else can you do?" I steer the conversation away from destiny. In my heart, I know that I don't believe the superstitions. All the women in our lane believe in the eternal, inescapable fate of our nomadic Nat tribe because they can't imagine anything beyond it. There was no defiant mother or cousin or sister to fight for them. I decide to spell out my other fear. What if I don't understand anything? There, I've said it. I don't want to be the stupidest kid in the class anymore, especially knowing what the boys will do to me. She looks at me with no expression on her face. Then her brow furrows into a small fold. "As far as I remember, you did fine in school. At least when you were a kid.
you used to get the highest scores for reading aloud, both in Hindi and English. You used to be so fond of books. I could not tear you away from the school library. She smiles at the memory. I smile back. I used to love the dusty library, the smell of books, and the stories I read in the privacy of the desk between the shelves by the window. Tagore, Sarat Chandra, Mahadevi Verma, and the adventure stories by the English writers Enid Blyton and Laura Lee Hope. Words have always come easily to me. Then came the hunger, the bullying, the chores at home, my first menstruation. Everything slipped away. That was because you and Salman would help me when I got stuck. I mumbled my head down. Then ask Salman to help you, she suggests. He's always so busy with his studies, I mutter. Can't you help me? Do you think I remember anything after the hell I've lived through these past few years? There is an aggressive edge to her voice. I see a small, warm spark of hope fight the fear in her eyes. She wants to convince me to go to school against all the odds I must face. Under her clumsy makeup is a desperate appeal. I look at her and remember her full-throated and happy laugh as a girl. I resolve to rekindle the laughter, the light, and hope in her eyes. I will overcome my fears for her. I will fight for my future, for the dreams that she could never make come true for herself. Outside the sky is grey, the sun sending out weak rays through the mist. Far off a train whistle blows. I give Meeradi's hand a squeeze. I promise I will go meet Rinidhi. I want to anyway. Meeradi finally smiles again. She gets up to go. She can't stay too long, in case Chacha or Shaukat start looking for her as soon as a new client appears. I will send word to Rinidhi that you will go to her tomorrow, she says as she ties a scarf around her head. Her body language changes. She stiffens, drawing in her shoulders as she walks away. Selfishly, perhaps, I realize that I'm not just doing this for her. I want to be a person. I want to kick and fly.
Wow.
I want to win. I want to have the courage, like Rinidhi, to demand a life without fear. Thank you. To read, and I'm really happy that you're doing it for young adults and young children, because this is the age when they have these complex questions, they hear bits and pieces, they're privy to adult conversations as well, and they're trying to make sense of the world. So as a mother, as someone who's been interested in education, interested in what's happening in the world, feel helpless, feel hopeful, all at the same time. So thank you for this. Thank you.
Oh, the mic, that's it. So I don't have anything to say because Nandita has said it all. She's brought the book to life. She's brought Hira to life. The name of my character is Hira, which means diamond, and she's a diamond in the dust who polishes herself to become beautiful and sparkly. And thank you, Nandita. It was beautiful. So now, if anyone has questions, we'll take a few.
Or answers, we could use answers.
Nandita, why don't you come here? Because people may have questions for you also, as a mother.
No. It's your night. And
It's your book.
I'm very happy to be
It's
here.
your book.
I have to feel that. It was slowly, it's still not sinking in. You know, I kept wanting to make changes in the book when I was editing, so I would send notes to Gloria that I've written this, should I change it? And my editor at Scholastic was kind enough to let me do that. But then Gloria said, you've got to stop, you know, because writers suffer from the syndrome that you even will want to go into the bookstore and get the book out and read it one time. And Gail is here, she attests to that, right?
The book is never finished, it's only due.
That Gloria will connect with.
So Ruchi, my daughter has a question. So what motivated you to write it?
to write the book?
I wanted to share a story of hope and truth with people your age actually, and I had a true story, so I thought, okay, let me write it.
Ruchira, I have a comment and a question. The comment I have is Mao Zedong, the Chinese leader, many years ago said something profound. If you want to talk about women's liberation, give them economic independence and then talk about it. It was very profound. They're subservient because they're economically dependent on men, and that's been a problem. My question is, from both of you, with all the fight of the last 50 years, the world seems to be going the other way. We are losing ground. What do you think is the reason for it, and what will happen, how to reverse it back again?
You go for that.
You know, I hoped that the pandemic would help in a perverse way, because the pandemic doesn't care where we live, what race we are, what caste, what class, what age, you know, that it would help us to see each other that way. And I think it has. I think that there is an underpinning of change, at the same time that there's a Trumpian response to the contrary, to seize power from above. So I don't think we know the answer yet. But I think something new is possible because of this massive global mind change.
Because the 70 years we were going in the right direction since Second World War. Socially and every which way we made progress. And suddenly, the world over, it's not just here, it's everywhere.
Yes, and the internet has certainly made a huge, huge change too, because obviously it gives people a way to voice their desire for change without actually making change. And also it divides the world. I mean, how many people are there in the world that don't even have electricity, much less the internet? That's worrisome.
Well, I think it's also a little known fact, maybe we see it, that the world has gone from 2007, I believe it was 15% ruled by autocrats to today about 37%. So when you think about that, what autocrats are most afraid of is women's movements. Because they raise a voice and they gather, you know, collective power that doesn't really help them get their way.
People, I think, in back couldn't hear. Do you want to say? Right.
Sorry, so I'll repeat myself. What I said was, in 2007, about 15% of the world was ruled by autocrats, and today that number is about 37%. And actually, a Harvard researcher called Erica Chenoweth wrote this brilliant book about how autocrats most fear women's movements, because women's movements have the power to gather change in a collective way. And I think we're seeing the rise of these strong men around the world and what they are doing for women, to control women, just exactly what you're saying about the right sliding backwards. Because they know that this is one way of them not being able to succeed. But I think around the world also you're seeing a rise in women's movements. And so the hope is that that will ultimately prevail. But I think the fundamental change also is we all have to rise up and demand change, and certainly demand change in the laws, which were never written for us, and help what the women who live these lives can actually ask for.
Thank you. Questions for Ruchi?
Oh, anyone. Zach, go.
Sure, just a quick comment and question too on just sort of the slide to authoritarianism. There was a great book by Bill Dobson called The Dictator's Learning Curve, maybe around the same era, and it talked about how the authoritarians actually all meet together to exchange best practices as well. And a lot of what they're doing is disguised as democracy. Look at Russia, for example, over the last 10 years, they've been passing these very draconian laws that are masked as democracy. So that's definitely a good point. But I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about, we were talking just the internet. Gloria, but also we're in the middle of a new revolution as we speak with artificial intelligence that's been dominating the news over the last couple of months in particular. And I know these are conversations we've had together, and I'm curious what you think the potential of some of this brand new technology to help both on the rehabilitation of some of these women that have to get out, but also how it could be used to prevent some of this with global trafficking as well.
You know, like any technology, if it can be controlled and regulated to serve our needs rather than taking over and serving the needs of people who are just the top 1%, then we have a chance. And so how do you democratize technology so that it's not just a few people who control it and just to make money they will allow anything to happen on their platform. So while AI-powered tools right now are being used by traffickers to create fake profiles and chatbots to recruit season and groom kids on Facebook and Instagram and other places, what we have to do is really figure out how we can use AI, artificial intelligence, to process massive amounts of data to be able to counter what the traffickers are doing. Because traffickers are like 10 steps ahead of us. And that we can only do by collaborating with people with lived experience. It can't be just AI, it can't be just human beings. Because we can't process data at this rate. And I think there are possibilities in prevention, because we can profile, the AI can process data about what kind of keywords are traffickers using to target young people. A 12-year-old boy surfing the net to do homework uses the word suicide 3 times or uses the word lonely 5 times, and that's a trigger which the trafficker has a way to pick up on, and that boy will see a cartoon character on his computer which will tell him, want to have some fun with me, and 2 clicks later that boy is watching a woman being penetrated in every part of her body, crying and saying, give me more. So he begins to think sex is connected to violence and no means yes. Now how do we figure out what are the keywords and what are these predators looking for, and how can we stay ahead? And we have enough experts, because there are people now who are in the anti-trafficking movement who've been working for decades. So we have the information, there's a survivor-led movement out there. They of course know what they were picked up for and all of that. So we have to harness that and get ready with the tools right away. We have no time to lose actually.
Can I ask?
So Ruchi's struggle has been to stop sex trafficking. But there's a whole other group of people who are big critics of Ruchi, who say that she is denying the natural urge of man, and that you should legalize prostitution and get them some rights. So how do you and Gloria answer this criticism?
Oh, she has a mic.
Oh, okay. Well, there have been various movements to legalize prostitution. In this country, it was Las Vegas that was the beginning of such an experiment. And it has actually never quite worked, because the process of prostitution is punishing. The average life expectancy of a prostitute is actually not very high. I mean, think about body invasion. Think about going to the dentist. Okay, now compare that to sex trafficking. I mean, it's intrinsically, I think, very difficult, if not impossible, to make prostitution and sex trafficking anything other than a last resort.
Yes.
Can I ask a question, Gloria? 15 years ago, when Lehman Brothers failed, people said that if it were Lehman Sisters, it would not have. But my question is it really Lehman Sisters, or a better combination is Lehman Sisters and Brothers?
Yeah.
I think ultimately it has to be a combination, but I do think that the female part of the combination has been undersold very much, and there's way more understanding of competition as useful than empathy as useful, and yet the oxytocin, as we were saying, that when you see somebody falling in the street, you have an impulse to help them even if you don't know them. That's oxytocin, right? Our species can't survive forever without oxytocin. So if we in this room value it, you know, in our speech and in our the people we choose to work with, and you know, in our writing, I think we can each take that step forward.
I smell food. So, what
Can I
would you
thank everyone?
and tell them about the book signing and that?
So first of all, I want to thank the person who said I smell food, Dr. Azra Raza. Azra is a friend and just family also in New York. You know, she reminds me of the India that I miss. Her home is full of books. Her elder brother, she calls him Paisa, which is exactly what my father called his elder brother. And the culture that is slowly vanishing in India is what she holds on to in her apartment in New York, with poetry and music and art and philosophy and discussions on human rights in the middle of all of the fun that we have here. So Azra has been that sort of last bastion of refuge for a lot of us, but she's also been a friend who's inspired and taught me how to think, how to bring in different disciplines together to think about the subject. So she will bring in science, but she will bring in philosophy and poetry when she talk. And she'd say, Ruchi, did you think about it like that? And then I will begin to surf and connect the dots too. When I talk to her about the last girl, who's for me the most vulnerable of all human beings, and she is the last because she's poor and she's female and she is a teenager, and on top of that in India she is low caste, from an oppressed caste. And in America she's black or Native American, and she is the one who's most likely to be preyed upon by traffickers because of a lack of choices. So when I speak to Azra about the last girl, she says, let's think about prevention. What about when can that girl become the first girl? And then a few years later she comes out with a book called The First Cell, in which she says that you know, to prevent cancer we have to go for the first cell and find that. So, you know, Azra has the ability to think broadly, and her home is very special because of that, because again here we are a cross-section of people, as you will find out when you eat and talk to each other. And, you know, from people who make perfumes, to people who make music, to people who write books, you just have to talk to the people in the room and you'll find out. So I'm really grateful to have Azra in my life. And I'm also grateful to all of you for coming on a rainy day. To celebrate my first work of fiction, I Kick and I Fly. I want you to read it, I want you to share it with young people you know, I want you to talk about it as much as you can. We are in the age of social media, so every time you talk about it, it will help maybe someone find the book and read it too. And it's really my message in a bottle, that change can happen and a girl can stand up to trafficking and win. And her prostitution, if it had happened, would be based on her absence of choices, her homelessness and poverty, and it was never a choice, and it never can be. Thank you.